China military will destroy U.S. aircraft carrier with fires missile to South China Sea. China's latest volley of missile launches into the world's most hotly contested body of water served as a warning to two key U.S. targets, aircraft carriers and regional bases. The missiles launched into the South China Sea on Wednesday included the DF-21D and DF-26B, the South China Morning Post reported, citing a person close to the People's Liberation Army. Those weapons are central to China's strategy of deterring any military action off its eastern coast by threatening to destroy the major sources of U.S. power projection in the region. China is signaling to the U.S., its allies and partners that China has an answer to America's aircraft carrier strike groups, an answer that is always available and not dependent on deployment schedules, said Carl Schuster, an adjunct faculty member of Hawaii Pacific University's Diplomacy and Military Science program and a former operations director at U.S. Pacific Command's Joint Intelligence Center. In effect, China is saying, if the U.S. puts two carriers in the South China Sea, we send aircraft carrier killer missiles there. The launches show the U.S. the growing cost of any armed conflict, with a high-profile reminder of China's increasing arsenal of medium and intermediate-range ballistic missiles. President Xi Jinping rolled out the new PLA rocket force as part of a massive military parade in October, showcasing a capability that is challenging American military superiority in Asia for the first time since World War II. Researchers at the University of Sydney warned last year that Chinese missiles could wipe out U.S. bases in the opening hours of any conflict. A U.S. defense official who asked not to be identified told Bloomberg News that China fired 4 medium-range ballistic missiles during a series of military exercises this week. They landed in the sea between China's southern Hainan Island and the disputed Paracel chain near Vietnam, the official said, not far from where U.S. carriers conducted drills in recent weeks to back up the Trump administration's decision to challenge Beijing's sovereignty claims. Conducting military exercises over disputed territory in the South China Sea is counterproductive to easing tensions and maintaining stability, the Pentagon said in a statement Thursday. China's actions, including missile tests, further destabilize the situation in the South China Sea. The Chinese Defense Ministry reiterated its contention that the exercises weren't directed at any one nation Thursday, without mentioning the missile launch. Still, ministry spokesman Senior Colonel Wu Qian accused some U.S. politicians of trying to provoke a conflict between the two nations, telling a briefing in Beijing that China was not afraid. On Thursday, China's military issued a statement saying it expelled a U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyer that trespassed into waters near the Paracel Islands. We urge the U.S. to stop this kind of provocative acts, to strictly manage maritime and air military operations and strictly restrain its frontline troops, so as to avoid accidents, said Li Huimin, a spokesperson for the Chinese Army's Southern Theater Command. The missile tests appeared intended for U.S. consumption, rather than a domestic audience, with coverage on the country's heavily censored internet largely limited to foreign media reports. Earlier this week, China protested an American U-2 spy plane's flight near the exercise zone in the East China Sea, presumably to glean intelligence about the country's capabilities. The aim is to test the capability of the troops, said Li Jia, a Beijing-based naval expert, who stopped short of confirming the missile test, say it is sending a warning to the U.S., as the U.S. has increased its military activities in the South China Sea. While the two nuclear-armed powers have many incentives to avoid a clash, the risk of escalation is growing as the U.S. and its allies seek to push back against a more assertive Beijing. The U.S. has in recent weeks carried out a series military exercises around the region and approved a landmark fighter jet sale to Taiwan. Against the backdrop of a national election, President Donald Trump has attempted to focus on China. The U.S. Navy's recent exercises in the South China Sea have included joint operations by the USS Nimitz and USS Ronald Reagan carrier strike groups last month and separate drills by the Reagan this month. Those moves followed Secretary of State Michael Pompeo's July 13 announcement clarifying U.S. legal opposition to Chinese claims over most of a vital shipping lane, parts of which are also claimed by Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan and Vietnam. The real risk is a U.S.-China conflict over Taiwan escalating to nuclear war, in part because the DF-26 can be armed with both nuclear and conventional warheads, said Jeffrey Lewis, director of the East Asia Nonproliferation Program at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies in California. If the U.S. were to see DF-26 missiles mobilizing to strike U.S. aircraft carriers, the president would have to order strikes against missile bases throughout all of China, not just coastal areas, Lewis said.